Hey, welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And today's episode is brought to you by Fairhaven Health. Fairhaven Health brings you the Milky's Milk Saver on the go, the mini version of the wildly popular original Milk Saver that collects your leaking breast milk. And today's episode is also brought to you by Momzelle. Momzelle offers stylish, comfortable, and quality nursing clothes at a great price that help you feel good breastfeeding anytime, anywhere. And we will hear more about our sponsors later. But right now, Dianne, do you have our review of the week?
I do have our review of the week. So this is from Cabaselli, who says that this is required listening for every breastfeeding mama. This podcast should be required listening for every mama who wants to breastfeed. I was introduced to it by a mom I met at our local breastfeeding support group when my second baby was about 9 months old. I quickly caught up on all the old episodes and listened every week. I so wish I had known about it when I was pregnant with my first child. I've learned so much and appreciate the common sense perspective Dianne and Abby provide. They bust common myths and give you the confidence to trust your body and your baby. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And I wish we were around when you were having your first baby too, but we were not, sadly. So...
No, and nobody knows to do this stuff with your first baby.
Oh, my gosh.
No, it's like, oh, let me check out a podcast. Let me do all the research, the right research. Like, nobody, that's the whole problem, is that it's not easy to find.
No, and who's thinking about it?
Right, exactly. And no one's handing it out to you.
No.
Usually the information that's being handed out to you is wrong.
I mean, you're in such a fog, trying to, just maneuver your way through life and keeping yourself and a human alive, and it's just who's trying to find information anywhere? I don't know.
Right.
I don't know how people are doing it sometimes.
Yeah. Well, you did it. We all do it.
We all do it. Yes. I'm always amazed by people that contact me and they're like, "Oh, I found you on Google." Like, who has the wherewithal? And you're like middle of the night, non-sleeping, recovering from childbirth haze to Google something. Like, I can't even.
I feel like that's all I did.
Oh, my God.
Maybe when you had kids, that wasn't the big thing. But now, that's like what everyone's doing. Googling. Why does my baby hate me? Why? That's what we're doing.
Oh, my gosh. I know.
And that's the problem, is because when you go on to Google, all of that information is terrible. I mean, you have to accidentally find the good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really, God, as part of my degrees when I was finishing up my degrees and stuff, a lot of it was about research and about, looking for journal articles and peer reviewed and, how to do research and all of this stuff. And it's so now when I Google anything, I am looking for very specific things to know, is this a legitimate information? People don't know to do that.
I have degrees too, and I didn't know how to do that either when I had a baby.
Yeah, it depends on what you learn
I
in
knew
school.
how to do that. Yeah, I knew how to do that with social work stuff, but I didn't know you had to do that with breastfeeding stuff.
Right.
I'm like, let me just Google this. I'm looking for this information. Here's some information. Okay. I didn't know that there was this mountain, this avalanche of terrible, terrible information.
Oh my God. I know. Well, this isn't what the podcast is about this week. So,
in true form, we are on a tangent.
Yes. We will maybe someday talk about how to find the best information.
Yeah.
But, we'll do that another time. Today we're going to talk about something more fun. Not really, but important nonetheless. Right?
Yes. Today we're going to talk about biting. And biting is a really big problem because it really hurts and it can cause open sores. And even if it doesn't, people want to stop. And biting ruins breastfeeding relationships all the time because people don't know what to do about it. And there are some things that you can do.
Yeah.
And this is this is a really common problem. Whether your baby's biting you all the time or whether they've done it a couple of times, it's problematic. And it gets in your head, man.
Oh my God. I was just going to say that because I have people in breastfeeding class prenatally who tell me I'll breastfeed till my baby has teeth because they're afraid they're going to get bit. They just think it's an automatic thing that their baby's going to bite them.
Yeah.
And it's That's not necessarily the case. It could happen, yes, but it's not a guarantee that it's going to happen. And there's things that you can do.
Yeah, my kids never. My kids bit me, each of them maybe once.
I had 1 out of 3 that bit me one time.
Yeah.
And that was it. Like, it is not something that...
It's not, it's not a guarantee that your baby's going to bite you. It's just so horrible that when you hear about it, you're scared of it.
Well, and, yeah, absolutely. But, I mean, I've had moms that told me that their babies just bite everybody and everything.
Yeah, right. And some babies will bite the boob every single time you put it in their mouth. Mm-hmm. Except when they're eating.
Right.
Because they can't. When they're actually drinking and swallowing milk, it's not possible.
And I think that's where the confusion lies, because I think people don't realize like how breastfeeding works when you haven't had a baby yet, and like you're thinking about this and okay, I'll breastfeed till my baby has teeth or whatever. But babies have to have, in order for them to transfer milk and to feed, they have to have their tongue over their gum line, and they can't physically bite you that way. They can't.
Right.
It's impossible. So if they bite you, they're not eating. They're just like doing whatever. Usually what I tell mothers is that when your baby is old enough to bite you, and this is, they're teething. First of all, I think it's important to make sure mamas know that, like, they're not doing it on purpose. They're not like, let me terrorize my mother because I can do it. It's not, let's see how much I can put her through already, It's not like that. They're teething and they want that pressure on their gums and they've got these new things in their mouth. Like there's stuff going on there. So
yeah, if you take your boob out of their mouth, they'll put something else in there. They'll bite whatever. They're not purposely biting your boob. It's not like it's not a breastfeeding related thing. It's this something in my mouth and I want to bite it because my teeth hurt.
Right. Absolutely. So what I usually tell moms is, by the time your baby is teething or has teeth, they are usually at least over 4 months old. I don't think I've seen a baby get teeth before 4 months. I'm sure somebody has, but I have not. So usually it's at least 4 months. So at that point, your breastfeeding relationship is typically in a different place than you are as a newborn. Like you're comfortable. You usually, like pop your baby in your arm or have him in a sling or, do whatever. You're looking at your phone or you're, whatever you're doing. You don't have to pay that like such close attention that you do when your baby is a newborn and you're, holding them with both arms and you're watching them and you're making sure the latch is just right. You're not doing that anymore. So you just kind of pop them on and you do your thing. And maybe maybe you're sleeping, maybe you're sleeping, the baby's sleeping, whatever. And then what happens is they doze off or they're not done and you're not paying attention. And that's when they bite. It's never like during the middle of the feed.
Right.
So
that's not possible.
Right. It's not. So we have to go back to kind of watching them again and just not letting them stay on in comfort nurse if they're a biter. Or, if you notice that they're dozing off, take them off, so that way you kind of avoid that biting part.
Yeah. The dozing off thing, I that was something that even I didn't have biters, but I became an expert at laying them down on the bed, nursing them to sleep. And as soon as they started to get slack jawed, I would stick my finger in there really gently because they weren't suctioned down in there anymore. So it wasn't a matter of really breaking the suction, but I would stick my finger in and I would kind of press down on my nipple really slowly and just slip it out.
Yeah.
And then I'd slip out of the room for like 2 minutes, before they woke up again. But you can, you slide it out because even if they're not a biter, my kids weren't biters, but they did. If I just laid there sleeping at night and just left them on, they would sometimes get, they get slack jawed while they're sleeping, and they would just clamp down.
Yeah.
And that's not, oh my God. There were some howls in the middle of the night. And so
they don't mean to do that.
No, they're sleeping.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the same thing when they're awake. If they're done eating and you think they might bite you, take them off.
Yeah. And babies also get very distracted as they get older. like, and they're nursing and they're distracted and they're looking around and they're doing things. So you might have to, think again about going to a place where it's a little bit less stimulating, where they're going to just nurse and not bite and move their head around, or not like stop in the middle of a feed and, look and see what's going on around them. That is another time when they're going to, when they might bite too, is, during that distraction time. Sometimes they also want your attention. So they might you're doing something else and they're nursing and they want to, they want your attention. So they might bite. It's usually you can kind of pinpoint what's happening there. And whenever a mom tells me that her baby is biting, I'll usually say, is it, when are you seeing this happen? Is it in the beginning of the feed? Is it at the end of the feed? Like, what are we working with here? And it's almost always the end of the feed, falling asleep, like that kind of a thing. That is typically what happens.
Yeah. And I think because, like you were talking about before, nursing a newborn and how different it is. And when they're a newborn, we always say over and over, like, just put them on the boob, just put them on the boob, just breastfeed on demand, just put them on the boob and forget about it. That's the answer to everything. Just when in doubt, whip it out. Like, we're constantly talking about putting your boob in their mouth. And then you hear us going like, well, take your boob out, take your boob out. Like, it's very confusing. Like, but the thing is that there's just so many different stages and phases of breastfeeding, where like what you're going to do and what's most helpful for you and going to help you through it are different at each one of those phases. Mm-hmm. And so when you get into that kind of teething and biting thing, now you got to start paying attention. You got to start like watching and start, in a different way than you were paying attention in the beginning. Yeah. Now you're like watching to see, if they're done. If you don't have a biter, then you don't even have to worry about it. Like, you can just leave them on there and they can fall asleep, whatever. But if you feel like they're going to bite you, then you're going to start taking your boob out. And then I think people, because when babies are teething really, really badly, when you can tell they're just going through it real bad, the tooth's going to pop out soon, they want to bite all the time. Yeah. They might even skip feedings to bite. Yeah. Because they just cannot. They're in so much pain. They're, they cannot stop thinking about it long enough to get through a feeding. And then that's a lot of times when people start reaching out. My baby's biting. He's not eating. I'm scared he's not getting enough food. Then people are worried. Mm-hmm. But really it's a short, teething as well is going to go through phases, right? I mean, there's going to be times where they're kind of like gumming on things a little bit. Then there's going to be times where they're just like, it's just outright horrible. It's consuming them. Yeah. And that's usually when the tooth is like about to pop through the gums. And when it does, it'll kind of even out again. But your baby's not going to starve through teething.
No, they're not. And you could do like those little icy things or like, cold things on their gums to help numb them out a little bit before before you're going to feed them, to maybe help with that, make them more comfortable. Mm-hmm. I don't even know, like, they used to do Oragel ages and ages ago, but we don't do that anymore. So right. I don't know if there's even anything.
There's these things called Highland's teething tablets.
Oh, I've seen those, yeah.
Those homeopathic things. I used them. Some people don't like using them. I think they used to have some ingredient in them that had got them recalled or something. That's what, I don't know what the status is of that right now, so obviously you can look into it and see if that's something comfortable you're using. But I think the frozen, like get a washcloth wet, mm-hmm. fold it up and put it in the freezer. They can chomp on that. Yeah. You can pump your breast milk and put it into like a popsicle mold. They could suck on that.
Yeah, those are good ones too.
Anything that's cold is going to help numb their gums a little bit. And then just any kind of teether, so they can just like really work on it. And the more they can work on it and rub on that to get that tooth to pop through, it'd just be better for everybody. Yeah, absolutely. And if they're like, if they're skipping a lot of feeds, then you might need to pump. If you're, you might feel like, in order to, you might feel kind of full. You might go, oh gosh, they skipped this, their afternoon feeding today, whatever. They're just chewing on everything and they won't, they don't want to eat.
Yeah. Teething's hard.
It is. Really it's hard on babies. I know. I think I've mentioned this before, but there's a photo that of a I think it's a, well, there's multiple now I've found, but I can put it on the website. There's like, it's a picture of a skull.
With the teeth coming in?
Yeah, so it's the skull of like a 5 or a 6-year-old, and you could see like the adult teeth pushing out the baby teeth. Like, and it's all up inside their sinuses and like down in their chins. Oh my God, you just look at it, you want to die. It's like, oh my God, you can't even imagine. I mean, maybe some of you have seen it. You're just like, oh my God, I had no idea that was going on inside their head. No wonder they're so miserable.
Oh my gosh.
It's crazy. And I see Jack is 7 now. He's going to be 8 in a minute. And like, I could see he's losing his teeth and all this stuff are coming in. It just looks crazy.
It does.
I look at every day he's a new person because there's a tooth gone. And then there's this like gigantic adult tooth coming in. And that they're not born with those adult teeth. They're born with kind of like these little nubs that turn into adult teeth. But they're huge. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, there's a gigantic tooth coming out of your little head. And I think actually when they get older, he doesn't ever seem like he's in pain. But
no, they don't.
Babies are in pain when it's all moving around, when those baby teeth are coming through. Oh, God.
I know. And it's just they don't know how to communicate to you. They can't communicate to you what's going on. So they're fussy, they cry, they bite, it's just, then you got to think too, they're growing, they're growing. So their face is growing, their jaws are growing. Everything is different. Like, we're constantly using new muscles, constantly adapting to, new growth. So they are really babies are really, it's amazing. When you really think about it, like all the stuff that goes on with them on a day-to-day basis. And they just have to adapt.
They do. Yeah, I know. There's so much that goes on. And we should definitely talk more about that after a word from our sponsors.
Okay.
Today's episode is brought to you by Fairhaven Health. The Milky's Milk Saver on the go is a mini version of the original Milk Saver loved by so many. The original Milk Saver is perfect for using on the opposite breast while breastfeeding to collect the letdown. But what about in between feedings or when you are out and about? The Milk Saver on the go is a discreet breast milk collection system designed to collect leaking breast milk when you are not feeding so you don't waste any more breast milk to a breast pad. The breast shells can be tucked right inside your shirt, and then you place your nipple right into the hole. The unique oblong shape allows you to collect more milk than other brands. Each shell holds about 1 ounce of milk, and people are collecting several ounces a day to add to their stash. It's not a pump. There is no work for you to do. It also helps protect sore nipples from rubbing and chafing while they heal. Head to fairhavenhealth.com and use promo code BADASS for 10% off your purchase. And today's episode is also brought to you by Momzell. Momzell is a family-owned business started by a breastfeeding mom, and they are thrilled to be a positive part of a mother's breastfeeding journey. Momzell is proud to offer stylish, comfortable, and quality nursing clothes and bras at a great price. I personally own a Momzell nursing tank, and I've worn it out with friends for a night out on the town because it's so fashionable. You don't have to trade in your desire to be fashionable to own comfortable and functional nursing clothes. Wearing things that you love and feel comfortable in can help you feel good about breastfeeding anytime or anywhere. They're based in Montreal, so you can get an even better price with the current exchange rate. You're going to want to check out all of the Momzell apparel, including tank tops, t-shirts, and dresses, as well as their nursing bras. And you badasses can use coupon code BADASS20 for 20% off your order at momzell.com. That's MOMZELLE. This offer expires December 31st, 2019. And you can find all of these sponsor links and these promo codes at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com, where you can also find our breastfeeding resources, all of our other episodes, and you can also find information about how to schedule your online consultation with Dianne.
So the biting, whenever we do a Facebook Live, one of the biggest, constant questions we get is about biting. What do we do? What do we do? So we definitely want to give you a few little things, that you can do. We're talking about the washcloth and the icy washcloth. Sometimes that can help get that biting out of the way. Watching them, making sure that, you're watching, see if they're dozing off. Another thing that we hear a lot is, because if they bite down and you're not expecting it, you do like scream or yell, like something, which usually scares the baby.
Yeah.
And that sometimes is enough. I mean, we don't want you to like run around trying to scare your child on purpose, but sometimes that's enough for them to realize that something is, like something happened and something's wrong. I don't know. I personally do not know how quickly they connect those two things, because you could be screaming about a spider for all I know. Like I don't know how quickly they connect it.
All they know is that they're startled. I mean, you're right. Some people do say that they didn't do it again after that. But if they're young enough, they don't know. They just get startled along with you. Because they don't know that they're doing it.
Right. They have no idea.
First of all, they don't know that you're a separate person. They're a baby. They think that you're just an extension of them. So they're not like, oh, that's my mom. Oh, that's her boob. I bit her. Like they don't have any idea. They're just like, something's in my mouth. I'm biting it.
Right. What might work for them is if they do bite, if you take them off the breast and stop the feed. Because that eventually, if you do it enough, will kind of relate to, oh, okay, that action got me this action. But it's not even that, like, that's going to take a little while. Hopefully your baby's not biting you every single feeding where you have to take them off the breast and, say, okay, now this feed's over. But I personally, I really think that like watching them and, kind of paying attention to what's going on and trying to gauge, at that point you kind of know, okay, my baby usually feeds for, so many minutes, and then they kind of like, hang out, or they're usually done by then. And so you kind of know, okay, they're going to be done. I can take them off before, the biting would start.
Yeah.
I don't know if your kids ever did this, but I almost found this kind of entertaining. When they bite themselves. Have you ever seen that?
Oh, no.
Where, like, because, like, babies put their hands in their mouth, their fingers in their mouth, and all of a sudden they have these teeth. And they have zero idea of what's going on here. And they bite down on their own finger. And they cry, like, because they're like, whoa! Like, but they don't know. But I thought of that, like, when you said, like, they don't know they're biting the boob. Because they don't. They don't know that they're cutting off their food source.
No.
This is just something that they do.
No,
need to move those jaws a little bit.
Right. So that's like a whole separate thing. Like, I really want people to understand that this is not like it definitely affects breastfeeding, but it's not a breastfeeding problem.
Right.
Like this is a teething issue, and they need all of these little, things to kind of, the frozen washcloth or the teethers or whatever to help them kind of work on that. But so when you're watching, we were talking before about if they're feeding, they can't bite. And so if you can either already know this, watch your baby or watch a Google like video or something. Google is approved for this particular thing. You can find a video.
But nothing else. Not
of like, right. You can tell by the nature and the rhythm of their suckling when they're drinking and when they're not. Mm-hmm. So it's like a, short, long. Short, long. That means they're pulling the milk out of your breast in that long, they kind of, this long suckle.
Yeah.
And then when they're not doing that, it's kind of just like short the whole time.
Pause.
Yeah, sit there, And when they start doing that, if you've got a biter, you're going through a real hard time right now with biting, take them off. They might get upset, try to distract them.
Right.
Ooh, look at the trees outside, or go for a walk, or just try to distract them, to give your nipples a time to heal. And so you can pay attention to when they're feeding and when they're not. Just end it and just get up and try to distract them into doing something else.
Right.
And so comfort nursing might not be your thing right now. It can come back, but if you're really trying to heal from like bites and it's really killing you,
then you might
just have them on for as little as possible. And the other thing that I hear people talking about is like, sometimes they bite down and they don't let go. And then people don't know what to do. Because then they're just on there, like,
Like a lockjaw?
You know, like a lockjaw. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they just kind of bite down because it's just like, that feels good, you know? They bite down and then they won't let go. And so there are two things that I recommend. First of all, don't hit them. Or, you know, because people do. They're like, oh, I just swatted him a little bit. You know, you don't need to do that.
Right.
You can, don't pull. Don't pull the baby's head out or try to pull your boob out because that'll cause more tearing and that cutting. Don't do that because they're actually literally like suction down there. Or they've got you between their teeth.
Right.
And if you pull, you're going to cause more damage. So you can stick your finger in and open their mouths, break the suction and open their mouth. The other thing that people do is they pull their baby's face, instead of pulling them away, pull them in.
Oh,
pull
yeah.
them in until their nose is covered and they can't breathe. And their reflex, don't worry, their instinct will be to open their mouth to take a breath.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And when they do that, then you can get it out.
That's extreme, I feel like. Like, I don't know that I've ever had anybody tell me that their child was so locked onto them, so had bitten down so hard that they couldn't get them off.
Really? I hear that a lot.
Do you? Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So much that, you know, we had to kind of figure out
oh my gosh.
what we were going to be telling people. Because
you had to get a plan.
Yeah,
it's crazy. But I was actually talking about this with somebody recently, just this week, and she's a listener that, you know, I also know in other ways too, but she is a listener, and she was talking about the biting thing, and she had also mentioned too that she tells people, because her daughter is like 15 months now, and she tells people, you know, it passes. You know, it's not it
Right.
is a little bit of a phase, just like everything else, and then it passes, and you don't run into it anymore. And it's like, you know, that's a good point. I don't think we ever tell people that. I think, you know, like, we don't think to say, okay, yes, they start to get teeth. You might have to deal with some biting. This is what you do. If they do start biting, people say, what do I do? My baby's biting. But nobody ever says, you know what? They stop. They don't do this forever. Even though they have teeth forever, they're not going to continue to be biting. This is just a phase while those teeth are coming in and they're actively teething. And then they don't do that anymore. They don't do that once those teeth are in.
No, and I think that's a really good thing to remember about breastfeeding overall. You know, the newborn days, those crazy, scary, vulnerable newborn days, those pass. Teething passes. You know, breastfeeding passes.
Yeah.
It'll be over before you know it.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's not to say that what you're going through right now isn't hard and it makes you want to stop and, you know, all of that. Like, I totally get it. Yes, it's hard. And some days you just don't want to do it anymore. But, you know, the other thing is I think that we forget, especially when you have a baby, because it's all consuming. It is totally all consuming. It seems like what you're going through is the only thing that you will go through until you die. It just feels like that big. And I think it's really, really hard to wrap your brain around the fact that what you're going through right now won't be what you're going through in a couple of months.
Exactly. Yeah. And I do try to tell moms that, like, when I see them as babies, their babies are newborn or maybe even a month or 2 months old, and they say, but I need to do this next month. What do I do? Or I need to, you know, take this trip, or I need to go back to work, or I need to be in this wedding and the baby's going to be with somebody else all day. And that's, you know, a month, 6 weeks away. What do I do? And it's like, that you're going to have a completely different child by then. You know, it really, things change so rapidly. Yeah. That it's just, you're in these phases for a very short period of time. And I remember, like I said, one of mine bit me. It was one of my twins bit me. And it was just one time. It was enough to cause damage. Like, I had an open wound. But my thought process on it was, we're 7 months in. I'm not going to quit now. You know, like, it's right. Not like that wasn't an option for me. So I had to figure out, like, okay, we're going to have to figure out how to heal this and get past it. Which I did try to find a lactation consultant, and I went to the hospital that I had them at and asked to see somebody, and she came out and gave me a couple packs of lanolin and, like, sent me on my way. She never even like talked to me about it. So this ladies is why I became a lactation consultant, because, like, I had to figure everything out for myself when I was breastfeeding these craziness children. But it really, I didn't want that to be my end point. You know, I wanted to end on my own terms, or on, you know, I didn't want it to be because of biting.
Right.
So it's, we had to figure out how to get past it. And it's a phase. It's just a phase.
Yeah. I remember when Jack bit me. I was sitting in the recliner and my husband was in the bathroom. And Jack bit me. I yelped. He cried. And I was like, oh my God, he just bit me. I can't believe it. And my husband's listening to all this going on in the living room. And he's like, yeah, it sounds like nobody's happy about it. And I was like, it made me stop and think like, oh yeah, he didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
You know, like he was crying. Like he was like not a willing participant in any of this.
Right.
You know, he's like, what's going on? So yeah, they don't, you know, not that it makes it doesn't make you bleed any less.
Right. Or the pain,
to hear that, yeah, it doesn't make the pain any better to know that they're not doing it on purpose. But they don't want to do it. And as soon as they can figure out how to stop, and as soon as it, you know, as that pain passes, they will stop. And hopefully you can minimize the damage and the pain in the meantime with some of these tips that we talked about today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hope it's helpful.
Yeah, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.